15 emergency repairs are taking place following an accident just south of the services. In Hertfordshire, the A1M is partly blocked northbound from the Welland bypass up towards Stevenage, where a lorry's broken down. In Essex, the A12 is closed towards London just before the M25 at Brook Street following a serious three-vehicle collision. Long queues back up the Brentwood bypass, and there are delays of 3/4 an hour on trains between Walsall and Rugeley, Trent Valley and Birmingham New Street after a train broke down at Hampstead. Now, National Rail tell us that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not one, but 2 sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound? For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and the designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry and this is Dewbs & Co. Coming up tonight, yet another occasion where a murderous scumbag refused to go to the dock and hear his sentence, but this time the judge saying that he can't be forced because he's in a wheelchair. Excuse me? Also, the party I lead is breaking from the past. Foreign criminals will be deported. Those are the words of Kemi Badenoch. Well, I will say that chance would be a fine thing, wouldn't it? But do you ever think it'll actually happen? And the apparent Labour welfare cuts, some MPs are absolutely furious about it. And some folk are now saying that the Labour Party is at risk of becoming the nasty party. Your thoughts on that? And as a woman, is it too much to ask to have a female-only changing room without men in it? You'd actually think not, but it seems to be increasingly so, and we need to discuss that. Yes, indeed. We have got a lot to discuss tonight. Alongside me, Baroness Jacqueline Foster, the Tory peer, and Matthew Lauser, the former Labour advisor. But before we get stuck in, let's cross live and give you your 6 o'clock news headlines.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines. It's just gone 6 o'clock. A 59-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter in connection with the North Sea collision yesterday between a cargo ship and a US military jet fuel tanker. It comes as the Coast Guard has called off the search for a missing crew member, while emergency services rescued 36 other crew members. The owners of the cargo ship Ceylon say it was not carrying sodium cyanide as previously reported. That container vessel is still on fire and it is expected the ship will now stay afloat. Meanwhile, local wildlife trusts are warning today of the potential devastating impacts of pollution from the tankers on habitats and species in the area. Triple killer Carl Clifford has been given a whole life order for the crossbow and knife murders of his ex-partner Louise Hunt, her sister Hannah Hunt and her mother Carol Hunt. 26-year-old Clifford, who refused to attend his sentencing today, was also found guilty of raping Louise before he killed her. Our GB News Home and Security editor Mark White is outside the court.
Clifford was criticised by the judge, the police, prosecutors and most importantly by the family of his victims for the cowardice he showed in not attending court for the sentencing. In passing that sentence, the judge, Mr. Justice Bonathan, said, "The evidence I have heard shows you to be a jealous man, soaked in self-pity, a man who holds women in utter contempt. There was," he said, "only one sentence that was appropriate, and that was a whole life tariff. In other words, Carl Clifford will never taste freedom again."
In other news, suspected Channel migrant Abu Wadi has pleaded not guilty to entering the UK illegally. 33-year-old Wadi, who allegedly arrived on a migrant boat, is charged with knowingly arriving in the UK without leave. He will next appear at Maidstone Crown Court on the 8th of April. The Metropolitan Police has launched an investigation into the suspended Reform UK MP, Rupert Lowe. The MP for Great Yarmouth was reported to police by Reform on Friday, with the party alleging that he made verbal threats against the chairman. A Met Police spokesman said the force had launched an investigation into an allegation of a series of verbal threats made by a 67-year-old man. Meanwhile, Mr Lowe has said his lawyers have made the Met Police aware of his willingness to cooperate in any necessary investigation. He added the allegations are entirely untrue. And Donald Trump has said he will double his planned tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminium from 25% to 50%. He said the increase in the tariffs is set to take effect tomorrow. In the latest twist in a deepening trade war, Trump says it's in retaliation for 25% tariffs that Ontario placed on electricity it sends to northern US states. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Michelle.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to news alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much for that, and hello everybody. How are you tonight? I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co with you until 7 o'clock. Alongside me, Baroness Jacqueline Foster, the Conservative peer and former member of the European Parliament, and alongside her, Matthew Larser, the former Labour advisor. Good evening to both of you.
Good evening. Hi.
You're very welcome tonight, as are each and every single one of you at home. What is on your mind tonight, ladies and gents? We've got a lot to discuss, and you can join the conversation all the usual ways. You can email me at gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website, gbnews.com/yoursay. Or, of course, you can tweet or X me. But look, today, we all kind of followed this story, didn't we, with absolute horror. I'm speaking about that triple crossbow killer, Kyle Clifford. Well, he was due to be sentenced today. As it happens, he got a whole life order multiple times. Let's just take a listen to the sentencing from the judge.
The evidence I have heard should be a jealous man, soaked in self-pity, a man who holds women in utter contempt. Each precious life so full of potential, of future successes and celebrations torn away by your appalling violence. For each of these three murders, the sentence will be one of life imprisonment with a whole life order. That means a sentence from which you will never be released.
Disgusting individual. One of the things that makes it even more disgraceful is that yet again, and I say yet again, because this seems to happen all the time now, Kyle Clifford decided he wasn't going to bother getting himself into the dock to listen to the sentencing remarks. The judge was saying that because he was in a wheelchair, in case you've not followed the story, Kyle Clifford essentially went on the run and shot himself, presumably in an attempt to kill himself, but that failed miserably and is now paralysed and in a wheelchair. So the judge was then saying you can't basically restrain and force this person. It would be kind of not the right thing to do because he's in a wheelchair. What do you think to that?
Well, I was absolutely astonished. I'm actually getting pretty sick and tired of excuses being made for these defendants and actually giving them an option. It says in the feedback that the defendant was asked to attend but refused. In my view, if you are the defendant, you are required, you should be required to be in, to stand there, to be there, or sit in this case, he happens to be in a wheelchair, so they have to restrain him. I couldn't really care less about his sensibilities. What it does do, in my view, sadly, is the family in this case, their day in court to read out their statements with the person that perpetrated these horrific crimes. It's not quite the same. And I just think we need to toughen up here. As I said, I'm not interested in the defendant's sensibilities. This was a premeditated attack. I don't think it was brought on by this other misogynist guys who happen to have a very bad reputation. This sort of attack wasn't, I don't think, thought about overnight. I think he's probably thought about it for some time. He carried it out, and the fact he's in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, I don't really care at all.
Matthew?
Well, I mean, I basically agree. I think we've seen case after case, Lucy Letby perhaps being the most infamous one, where the convicted criminal, they're not the defendant anymore, in a sense, they are the convicted criminal, refuses to turn up for their sentencing. And we've seen pressure, you know, frankly, growing to get a law in place that forces people to go. I mean, one of the problems with he's going to have a whole life sentence. One of the tactics would be to add to your sentence if you didn't turn up. Well, you can't add to a whole life sentence. So I think it was a pretty poor excuse to say that because he's in a wheelchair you couldn't get in there. I mean, you know, that's in a sense it's rather anti-disabled, because, you know, he's pretty mobile in that wheelchair, as we've seen. So they could have got him there. I thought the judge, to be fair to the judge, I thought the judge's summing up of the verdict was really beautifully done and paid great tribute to the family, who obviously did, as Jackie said, missed out on their moment in terms of the dad. John Hunt wanted to look him right in the eye as he was delivering his words. He didn't get that chance, but I think the family will be moved by the judge's words.
Yeah, and what I thought was really powerful, actually, is that the dad, so John Hunt, of course, he is the BBC racing commentator. What he actually said was he'd prepared a lengthy statement to read to Carl, a victim impact statement, and he wanted to go ahead and read it as though Carl was actually in the dock. You know, and if you've got 5 minutes, I would urge you to read that victim impact statement, and also the other one as well from the surviving daughter. I mean, it's just so soul-destroying, and he ends it. The father, John, ends his statement and he says, "The screams of hell, Kyle, I can hear them faintly now. The red carpet will come out for you. At that point, when the person that you could have been meets the person that you are, you will realise your miserable fate, and it will last for eternity." And I just thought that was so powerful. And John Hunt talks a lot in this statement about the family, Carl Clifford's family. I mean, and it seems to be quite a dysfunctional family. And the mum, Carol, the lady that was murdered, she apparently, when she answered the door to Kyle, she was basically saying to him, look, you need to go and try and get some relationship therapy, because if you don't sort yourself out, you're never really going to be able to have a healthy relationship. And there's no excuse for what this Carl Clifford did at all. But there is sometimes a small part of me that if somebody's been brought up in a very dysfunctional family where they've not had healthy relationship norms around them, they don't know what a healthy relationship looks like, I do wonder if there's more that should be done to help those people kind of reconfigure their blueprint. Obviously, I'm not trying in any way to excuse this guy's behaviour, because there is no excuse. He's appalling. But I often then wonder if you don't have that framework of healthy relationships, because this all seems to have stemmed from the fact that his girlfriend, you know, dumped him, basically. What do you think to that?
No, I'm not convinced, I'm afraid. I mean, I will have known, many of us will have known children when we were kids and they were brought up in very dysfunctional families. I'm not saying it doesn't have some sort of effect, but I think too often these days it's used as an excuse. We are brought up in an environment, and OK, it's not great at home. You go to school until at least you're 16. He went into the army in this case, so you're not as though he's not surrounded by professionals then.
I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about, and I'm not. This is not an excuse, and I should almost disassociate the two things that I'm trying to talk about, because there is no excuse, and there's a full stop at the end of that. I'm not trying to say but.
Oh no. And
what I'm suggesting is, when it comes to intimate relationships, so I'm not talking about workplace relationships. I'm not talking about discipline in the army. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about intimate boyfriend, girlfriend relationships, whatever those intimate relationships may be. If you've not had a blueprint of actually, shouting, screaming, physical aggression, all of this kind of drama and trauma and chaos, that's not normal and it's not healthy. But when you've been brought up in a domestically abusive situation, that is your norm. And the way you resolve conflicts, it can be in wrong ways and so on.
I'm going to have to disagree with you particularly, because I know I had a relative and she had a very abusive husband and 3 children. And this was very, very common many years ago. There were no refuges or anything like that. Her children didn't then go on to be abusive to their wives or their girlfriends. So, yeah, I'm not saying that there is never an occasion when this arises, but I'm afraid these days I think there is always an excuse. Too often there is an excuse why people do things, and yet there are thousands and millions of others who are in awful circumstances themselves and they wouldn't dream of doing that. This guy has got no moral compass. He had no moral compass, and he didn't want a moral compass, despite probably school and the armed forces trying to instil one there.
Another thing that caught my eye was a load of people was trying to kind of almost pin this on the likes of Andrew Tate, saying that this guy had apparently seen all these different videos in the run-up to this crime. What do you think to that?
So I don't think that you can blame the whole thing on what he's watched online, but I think there is an issue about radicalisation. I was very disappointed that, pressure from the Trump administration saw Andrew Tate sort of, smuggle back to the US, as it were, a few weeks ago. But I think there is an issue about what's out there online. I mean, we all know from personal experience just how nasty people are online because they think they can get away with it. But I don't think fundamentally it's a bit like, I think it might have added to instincts. It might have thought it gave him a bit of licence, but clearly there was something that's just very, very wrong with him as an individual. So I think it may have been a contributing factor, but not the factor.
Well, look, coming back to the original point about this guy refusing to go to the dock, we've heard this so many times with so many different criminals, exactly the same thing, they won't go to the dock. So again, we go around this circle all the time, don't we? So yet again today we're hearing that laws will be changed to enact and to force this. I mean, I've got a question. How difficult must it be to just build a soundproof box in all of these major courts so that you can get that person in there, drag them in there, lock them in there, and you force them to listen, and whatever ridiculous antics they feel like they want to get up to, screaming and shouting and disrupting, you won't be able to hear it on the other side, so they can do that to their heart's content. But the sound and the words of their actions will be piped in. That's what I would be doing if I was in charge. It surely cannot be that difficult, but if you know a reason why that hasn't happened, do tell me. But a government spokesperson has said that cowardly killers like this individual who refuse to look grieving families in the eye as judges hand down their sentences, deny victims and their families the opportunity to tell them all the horrific ways that they have destroyed life, and that's why the government is committed to changing the law so that courts have the power to order the most serious offenders to attend their sentencing hearings. And this is where it gets interesting, because they say with reasonable force and being used where necessary. And criminals who refuse will face being locked up for longer. I mean, but to your point, if you've got a whole life sentence, then there is no longer, so that becomes irrelevant.
Maybe you can do things about taking away prison privileges, things like that. I mean, with those who you can't extend the sentence.
They should just make them go. Just force them to go. You're absolutely right.
Literally, I would
force them to go.
Drag them.
You commit the crime. That is part of the way the sentencing is done.
Well, what do you think to it all? Do you ever actually think that this stuff will change? Because we've had this repeatedly multiple times now, haven't we? Your thoughts on that after the break. The welfare changes planned by Labour. Some are saying that Labour is becoming the nasty party. Is it really? I'll see you in 2.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tom Pickup, host of the Really 007 podcast. Hello, Tom. Thank you very much for joining. I've just been singing Live and Let Die to myself for some random reason. So what's going on here, then? Is Bond going to be changed forever? I mean, Barbara Broccoli was pretty hands-on and tough with what happened to that.
Yeah, you've got to think that this goes back to 1962 when it all started with Sean Connery and Dr. No. Her father, Cubby Broccoli, got the film rights and began the franchise and the movie character we all know as James Bond. So it's a big change. It was always going to come to an end eventually. Barbara took over pretty much when her father died, before GoldenEye, when Pierce Brosnan was the new Bond. But she's really had all the control with her half-brother, Michael G. Wilson, who's the other producer on Eon, since then, since 95, really. And they didn't cast Pierce Brosnan themselves. That was Cubby's casting. Their real casting was Daniel Craig. And I think now that that chapter has come to an end, and whether you liked it or not, it had a very definite ending, maybe that's been part of the reason where they think they'd rather spend their time in retirement doing something else. It's time to pass it on. And they've got a ready-made partner already in Amazon.
Is it going to get a little bit woke, though, Tom?
I've no idea, but all I know is that Jeff Bezos obviously is head of Amazon. He's already put a tweet up or on X saying, "Who do you want as the new James Bond?" Oh, okay. So he's already including the fans, which I suppose is a good thing. Whether or not we'll have a say, we don't know. But I think what it'll be is what people want, what people on the outside see as James Bond, not necessarily super fans like me.
The People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. Alongside me, Baroness Jacqueline Foster and Matthew Larza remain. I can give you an update in the horrendous situation when it comes to the Ukraine war. We've just got the breaking news that Ukraine, and I quote, has expressed readiness to accept a US proposal for an immediate 30-day ceasefire with Russia. This, of course, follows some key meetings there with key people there and officials in Saudi Arabia. Also, during the same meetings, the US have agreed to lift their suspension on intelligence sharing with Ukraine and resumes weapon shipments, apparently, to the country as well. Jacqueline Foster, your thoughts on that news with the ceasefire?
I think it sounds positive. This is a really complex issue. The fact that Marco Rubio, their Secretary of State, and the other negotiators have been spending time in the Middle East, because obviously there's a huge amount of input coming from hostile territories across the Middle East as well, to Ukraine and also to Israel, I think it's very positive, actually. And the fact they've, I think, reintroduced the assistance that, you know, that they had withdrawn in terms of intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Matt?
Well, I think it's great news that the intelligence sharing is going to restart, and hopefully that this truce, which people in Europe, like President Macron and Keir Starmer, have been pressing for, along with Zelensky, is actually a sensible move. So hopefully a bit of common sense in the White House, because obviously everybody wants to see the war end, but we don't want to see Putin's aggression triumph, because that would just lead to more killing.
But I'm assuming that you would concede that Donald Trump has been the key figure in making this happen?
Well, I'm not sure I would concede that he's been the key figure in making bringing. Look, He shouldn't have stopped the intelligence sharing. We know there are Ukrainians who are dead who otherwise wouldn't have been over the last few days because of that. He hasn't been steadfast enough in his support for the democratically elected government in Ukraine. Let's hope that out of the chaos, and it was chaos, those scenes we saw in the White House, which seems like an ages ago, but was barely 10 days ago, out of that chaos comes common sense and that the war can end, because everybody wants that above all. The Ukrainians, whose young men are dying.
I mean, all I would say is, I know Donald Trump gets a huge amount of stick for his approach and some of the things that he does, but at the end of the day, this war has raged for years now. So many people on either side have died, and we all talk about, we use this awful phrase, boots on the ground. These are people's brothers, sons, husbands. I saw one of the most awful, upsetting videos the other day, you know, some of you might have seen it. It went viral. It was just so upsetting. It was a dad on the train platform, and then this little boy and his mum inside the train, obviously leaving Ukraine. The mum and the child was leaving Ukraine for safety, and the dad was obviously trying to buoy and cheer up his son. And it was so, I found it so upsetting and so distressing, because obviously the dad knew that he might not potentially see that son again. And I'm just thinking, all of this we've lost sight when we all talk about all these boots on the ground. These are real people, and as much as people might criticise Donald Trump, his involvement, albeit far from perfect, I grant you that, surely that is one of the reasons that we're coming hopefully to an end.
Well, you're absolutely correct. Don't forget, we had our own horrendous situation with the IRA, and we ended that horrendous situation in the UK with a third party coming in and negotiating on both sides to try and end this conflict, which had caused absolute mayhem in this country. And so the fact, Donald Trump's not the most diplomatic person on the planet. We all understand that.
He's never pretended.
But the fact that he has said, and he said openly even before he was re-elected as president for the second term, that there was a need to actually start moving this forward. And albeit maybe clumsily at times, there was a bit of clumsiness on, I think, on Zelensky's side during that debate that day in the White House. It was all a bit of a shambles. But the good news, we've got to be positive about this, because that third party that comes in to try and negotiate or do something or get the ball rolling for both sides to bring them forward. And this is also Marco Rubio being around the Middle East. This has been able, I think, to take a step forward because of all those discussions taking place. Because it isn't just that there's Russia against Ukraine. There are also the allies of Russia who are absolutely opposed to, you know, Ukraine coming out of this well. So these are sensitive issues. So he is a game changer, Donald Trump, whatever people may think. And I think we need to all hope, as I think I've mentioned before, I have a friend of mine, and they've had a very nice lady with her little boy, and who's been living with them for the last 3 years up on the Wirral. And that's thousands of families, actually, in this country. So we all want the best outcome, and it's got to start somewhere. So this sounds positive, fingers crossed.
Well, Michael says, Michelle, what are you talking about? Trump is not interested in the loss of life in this war. He just wants to deliver on agreements that he's conjured up with Putin, he says. I can tell you what's got so many people talking at home, this notion about Kyle Clifford, the guy that murdered horrendously the people that we spoke about earlier on, the family of the BBC racing commentator John Hunt. We were just talking about a potential law change to force people, criminals, to go into the dock. But lots of you have got in touch basically saying that you appreciate the sentiment, but Mike says, I wonder if you're going to move these people from A to B. If you're going to force them, they're going to be a problem. And if someone's a multi-killer, they've got nothing to lose. And surely, Mike says, there'd be a threat to others before and during and potentially even after the case. How would you physically do it? Mike,
well, it's not physically do it. It's only in recent years where the defendant or the accused or the person standing there to be sentenced has decided that they don't want to turn up.
Yeah, but then now, Mike's asking, how would you get them there?
I don't know. I mean, you might have somebody in a hospital bed. I think that's quite different. In absentia, they're being sentenced. But no, you can physically lift one man I mean, we're talking about one person who's in the dock. It's not as though that, you know, there's 7 people standing there at the same time. There's one person, and they have to restrain them in prisons. I mean, the police have to restrain people. People are trained to do this. So we're not expecting some little 5-foot, you know, lightweight woman. Well, we're not very tall, I suppose.
I think you two could restrain anyone.
We'd restrain them verbally.
I think so.
Imagine me and you, Jacqueline, Carl, Clifford, or whoever it is in their cell saying we're not going to go up to sentencing. I tell you, it'd last 2 minutes with me and Jacqueline.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you that for free. Gloria has said, I've got an idea, Michelle. If these people really will not go to the dock, why wouldn't you get speakers and a screen and play it to them in their cell so that they have to listen and hear and see what's actually going on? I understand that, and I don't think it's a bad shout, Gloria, but what about, the point is, people like John Hunt, the victims, often they want to look that person in the eye. They want to say to that person, look at what you've done. There was a case, I was reading about it earlier on a few years ago, where the criminal, it was awful, he'd snatched this teenage girl, I think she was about 14 or 15, and done horrendous things to her. He refused to go to the dock because he couldn't bear to hear again about the things that he'd done. He didn't want to hear again. His crimes repeated. Get it. We'd sort it right
I rest
out.
my case.
We would sort it right out.
We would sort it out.
Anyway, keep your thoughts on all of that coming in. We've got so much to discuss after the breaks. Women, is it too much to ask that we can have a changing room without men inside it? It seems to be, unfortunately. I'll discuss that. Also, foreign criminals, should they be instantly deported? And if so, how would that work? I'll see you in 2.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Storm Yana brings heavy rain and also risk of thunderstorms to western and central parts of the Mediterranean, but further east it's mostly settled. Outbreaks of rain just starting to clip into parts of Tenerife, also southern parts of Portugal and Spain, but the bulk of the heaviest rain across central parts of the Mediterranean, where we're still seeing a risk of thunderstorms as we head through into Wednesday. Largely settled across Greece, though, and remaining settled for the rest of the week, and this is where we'll see the best of the temperatures, but elsewhere still a risk of showers and temperatures in the mid-teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Well, I'm afraid problems continue on Merseyside tonight, the Garston Road at Garston. So this is just to the west of Speke. It's closed. The lorries caught fire off Horrocks Avenue. On the M6 in Staffordshire, the left lane's blocked off northbound from the Stafford services up to junction 15, the Stoke-on-Trent turn off emergency repairs continue following an accident. And the A38M Aston Expressway is down to a single lane out of Birmingham. There was an accident at Park Circus, long queues back past Dartmouth Circus out of the city centre. In southeast London, Rotherhithe Tunnel, that's still closed off northbound after a car broke down. Long queues as a result on routes through southeast London, including around Greenwich, I would say. And the A12 is closed towards London just before the M25 following a free vehicle collision. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here with an exclusive opportunity just for you, our incredible GB News viewers. We're giving you the opportunity to win a VIP studio tour right here at GB News HQ. Plus, you'll also get to meet yours truly. It's easy to enter, just head to gbnews.com/community competition and follow the easy steps. Don't miss out, enter now, and I'll see you soon at GB News. Full T's and C's apply.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Baroness Jacqueline Foster, the Tory peer and former member of the European Parliament, alongside me, as is Matt Lauser, the former Labour advisor. Talking about criminals not going to the dock for sentencing, lots of you getting in touch. There's if I counted up how many times I heard the word cattle prod, mentioned in my inbox, it'd be quite a few. I'd be able to buy myself quite a few drinks tonight, I can tell you that. I was telling Matthew Lauser some of my ideas about how I'd get horrendous criminals into the dock, but Matthew Lauser made the good point. I probably won't get half of them through the European courts, would I?
I think you know, the more extreme measures, the problem is they will then take a court case. So that's presumably one of the reasons that's been behind the caution about how you do it if you do introduce the law.
I know, but this is just how the world's gone mad, isn't it? So you're actually trying to force violent criminals to face their day of reckoning. And you know that actually, if you do try and literally yank them in there, you could find yourself the wrong end of the law. Honestly, clam wild, I say that often, don't I? Anyway, look, let's talk about criminals then, shall we? The Tories are going to table an amendment to the government's immigration legislation. Essentially, it would require all foreign criminals to be removed from the country, including anyone charged or convicted with an immigration offence. Now, I've got to say, this is not going to fly, really, is it? Because the government is just going to vote down this opposition.
Yeah, and also it sounds like common sense. It's a good headline. We saw a screen grab earlier from the social media the Tories have been doing on it, and as a concept, it's popular. But the problem is in reality, it won't work because at the moment we can't get rid of the foreign criminals who should be deported automatically because they've got sentences over 1 year. This amendment is to deport everybody, even if they have sentences less than 1 year. The problem with it is does this apply to community sentences as well, so for very, very minor offences? And I would want at the moment us to concentrate on getting those foreign criminals who have been convicted. I think I would like us to concentrate on getting them out whilst their sentences are going on, because it costs us a fortune to actually pay for these foreign criminals whilst they're still serving the sentence. Can we get them to serve more of their sentence in their home country? But when they do come out, if we can't do that, they should be sent home. So concentrate on getting the most serious people out of the country before grabbing a headline saying something that's impractical.
Do you think you'd ever see a scenario where the Labour Party would condone leaving, for example, the ECHR?
I mean, that's interesting. I think under Keir Starmer, no. I think that what we do need to do, though, is I think as a country we're going to get to the stage where people want a more common-sense approach. I certainly think we need to do something about judges who interpret the rules in the crackers way, whether it's the rules from the ECHR, or if the Tories brought in a British Bill of Rights, if the judges still say, you know, the chicken nuggets case or any of the other daft ones that we've heard about, then a head of steam will grow. But I don't know how you do that because obviously you've got judges independent in place. But I think that, you know, Labour people get as annoyed about some of these cases as everybody else.
Jacqueline?
Well, I agree with pretty well everything that Matthew has said. I wish we'd have done this years ago, actually. And we did try to really step up on deportations. And, of course, one of the biggest problems were human rights lawyers. And, of course, you've got the ECHR, and having been in the European Parliament for 15 years and whatever, 20 years in Brussels altogether, what I did see that there were many countries, many members of the European Union, who basically overrode what the European Court of Human Rights had determined, because they believed that their responsibilities as a national government actually superseded what the ECHR had said. And I think in this country they hide behind what's called international law. Every time, not every time, but so often we're trying to do things, whether we're trying to deport people, etc., and then immediately it's, well, we can't do that because it's against international law. Well, we actually have parliamentary law in this country, and what is not on the statute book is that every time there happens to be an international law, that we have to apply it. But they've got into this mindset in this government and governments before, I think over the last 20 years, starting probably with the Tony Blair government, that if it was an international agreement, if it was international law, that must supersede...
We kind of gold-plated it here,
we were gold-plating it, and we've still done that. So while we're still in the ECHR, we're there, but they need to grow a pair, as they say, and we need to deport these people. Labour have made a start, but I think they've been quite wimpish about it.
One of the things that I think we need, and I know that people have been campaigning for this, is data transparency. So I think there needs to be a real push to have crime data that's properly documented, that has all ethnicities, nationalities, asylums, status, you name it. All of that data needs to be made available, so actually we understand what the true picture looks like, and then perhaps we can move forward with gusto once we go from there. Let me ask you, in fact, let me ask you...
We've got some of that, the data came out.
Yes, some of it.
And some of it's done a breakdown now on the criminals.
Yeah, but there's more holes in that
and the
data
proportion.
than Swiss cheese.
Yeah, but I think it was at least
sunlight is the best.
Oh no, this wasn't from government, because government weren't really giving us the data, which is outrageous, frankly.
Yeah, well, apparently some of that data is going to be released. I shall believe that when I see it. Let me quickly ask you about this though. The welfare changes that are being talked about when it comes to Labour Party. Lots of people are very disappointed about this. I've had a few people suggesting that Labour are moving away from its traditional roots, perhaps even becoming the nasty party.
Yeah, we've seen a letter from a whole group of charities criticising it when we haven't seen the detail yet, and indeed from the odd Labour backbench MP as well. I mean, I think people should be reassured that protection will still remain in place for those who are most vulnerable. What we've got to do is we've got to get the million extra people who since the pandemic are now on working age, out disability and sickness benefits back into work by supporting them. For example, there's a great scheme in Sheffield that I've been reading about, which has got a 100% success rate of supporting people. One of the examples they used was somebody who worked in a pharmacy, she had a medical diagnosis, she needed to have a stool to sit on, because, you know, she couldn't stand all day, but she could still do the job. She just needed a stool. The company was saying, oh, no, you can't have one. And in fact, what happened is the support stepped in, they negotiated it. She's still in her job. The company doesn't have to recruit anybody else. Everyone's a winner. So it's common sense stuff like that, so people don't get stuck in a life of benefits. Yeah, and that's what Labour Party's all about. The cue's in the title. It's about the party of work, which is often very good for people who've got mental health issues, but physically can do some jobs they need support.
That's the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we're spending £330 billion a year now on a welfare bill. Disability bill alone is £90 billion. We've got about, I think, 22.6 million people claiming benefits. We have got about 10 million of working age who are not in work. I mean, you know, we didn't deal with it robustly enough, certainly when we were in government, because you've always got these accusations that you're being nasty. But the amount of fraud and corruption, and we know that it's there, that is going on, which takes away, in my view, the benefits for those who are genuinely disabled, has got to be tackled.
And I think there's a big issue about mental health and people saying, obviously, people with you cannot be consigned to a lifelong benefit because you've got mental health issues.
Well, there's been abuse, and there is abuse. It moved from the bad back. That was the sort of theme that went on for years. People had a bad back and couldn't work, and the doctor couldn't really prove it. And it moved then to the mental health issue. And what annoys me most, I have known people, lovely people, who have had genuine, serious mental health issues. And then we have these thousands of people who are on benefit, don't want to work, saying they have mental health issues when they've probably got what most of us get at times, which could be grief, which could be stress, which could be anxiety, because that is what life is about.
And the government, that's why the government, I think, needs to be firm. I think we agree. We're agreeing a lot today.
We need to agree, but we need to really... They need to... I'd like to see the detail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the thing is, this is a headline, and I often say on here, that's a great headline. We've all got headlines. The devil's in the detail, and it's how robust you are in carrying this out.
And I think the charities need to wait and see the detail before they get
charities are big industry.
Yeah.
Charities are big industry. They employ a lot of people, and often many of these charities are in the business to keep their charities going instead of dealing with and that's the problem with illegal immigration and all of these things. They're big businesses, and they want to continue with the status quo when we can't afford to carry on like this in this country. We just cannot.
Well, we certainly cannot. What do you make to that, though? Perhaps you are somebody who's on, I don't know, PIP or something like that. How do you feel? Do you get worried? Because, in fact, I know you do. Lots of you get in touch with me and tell me that if you are genuinely struggling often, you do get paranoid and anxious about what the future might hold for you. Get in touch. Tell me your thoughts after the break. A simple question. Is it too much to ask that a female changing room excludes men? I'll see you in 2.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Now, it is going to be a bit of a chilly night ahead, and with that then, there's the risk of some frost, even some icy patches, as there will be quite a few showers around. A lot of the showers in association with a cold front that's making its way southwards, so we will see some showery pulses across parts of Northern Ireland through the end of the day, and also feeding into parts of perhaps the Midlands, but also across Wales. Quite a few showery outbreaks here, some sleet or snow over some higher ground possible. Also plenty of showers piling in across eastern parts of Scotland, northeast England, and again some sleet or snow likely here. Temperatures are going to drop, and where we get clear skies, dipping to around, if not a bit below freezing. So there could be a bit of frost around first thing tomorrow morning, also some icy stretches, so do take care on the roads. Otherwise, as we go through the morning, in the west of Scotland, it's looking largely dry, quite bright as well. Further east, more showers to come and a bit of a breeze as well, adding to the chilly feel to things. Mostly dry across Northern Ireland, but also across Northern England. In the east, it's looking pretty showery. Across the Midlands and much of Wales, a largely bright, fine start to the day, but in the far south of England, it is going to be cloudier, and there will be some showery outbreaks, all in association with that front that pushed through overnight. Through the day, I am expecting more showers tomorrow than we saw through today, and with that then there's a greater chance of some heavy ones, even a few rumbles of thunder perhaps, and some more sleet and snow. Over modest higher ground we could see a bit settling to lower levels. A few flurries are possible. Temperatures are going to be lower than today, and that makes it feel pretty chilly, especially when you factor in that wind. As we go through Thursday then, more showers across eastern parts. Further west, a greater chance of staying dry because there is high pressure to the west of us, but that high pressure is going to take quite a while to push its way in. So Friday is still going to be showery for many, but eventually we see something a little bit drier, more settled in time for the weekend, when we should have some sunshine around.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got Baroness Jacqueline Foster and Matthew Larza alongside me. The thing that's got each and every one of you talking tonight, I can tell you, is that whole conversation at the top of the show, which is all about how do you get horrendous criminals, quite frankly, into the dock to hear their fate. There are lots and lots and lots of messages and suggestions coming in. You're a very creative bunch. I can tell you now, though, there's not a single song solitary one of you that have got in touch with me anyway that think it's all right for these kind of criminals to sit there and refuse to face their justice. If only we were in charge of this country, ladies and gents, I'll tell you that. Now, a story that's really caught my eye, so it has. There's a lady, Natalie Barnett, she's called. She's what we call these days a fitness influencer, passionate about sports and so on and so forth. She's decided to open a women-only gym. Nothing controversial about that, you'd think to yourselves, wouldn't you? But oh no, this lady has been absolutely battered by activists online, calling her all names under the sun. She's had to restrict her account. It's got so nasty and so out of control that because this lady is trying to do this, and she's explaining that she feels that women need a safe space to be able to work out, have their own space, get changed, and so on and so forth. Now, I went to my gym very recently, actually, and I went into the female-only changing room. So imagine my surprise when there was a male in the changing room that I was in, the female-only changing room, and I went to the gym and I asked them their policy. What is your policy for the female changing rooms? And it was so bizarre. So they sent me an email basically saying that they were welcoming and inclusive. And I said, well, that's really interesting, but what is your policy when it comes to your changing rooms? And I got this email back. Take a look at this email. So this was from one of the managers at the gym. They said, "Hi, Michelle, I hope this email reaches you well. The changing rooms are split between female and male, with children attending up to the age of 8 years old of a different gender. No problems with that. For the female changing rooms in particular, though, this would cover females of all ages, boys up to the age of 8 years old, transgender females and non-binary members." I hope this helps you. And if you've got any further questions, I can help support you with this. And I'm sorry, but this made me really uncomfortable because what this gym, Virgin Active, in case you're wondering, is actually telling me as a member is that the single-sex female changing room is nothing of the sort. So, yeah, little boys with their mum, no problems. Yes, obviously female. When you start getting into the territory of, I quote, non-binary members and such like can enter this female changing room, you've lost me at this point because now this isn't a safe single-sex space. This is a space where any member, a man, can just go into the changing room, tell me that he's a non-binary person, and in he goes. I'm really not comfortable with that. And suffice to say, everybody, I went on and cancelled my membership as a result of that. Where do you stand on this kind of thing?
I think it's absolutely appalling. I think the gyms in question and any other organisation are reneging on their responsibilities. The responsibility that you have, whether you are a government organisation or a private business, is to ensure if you have customers, I was in the airline industry, that your primary purpose is to safeguard. And therefore, if you are allowing men, biological men, which is what we're talking about, into a women-only changing room or toilets and everything that goes with that, then you are reneging your responsibility. I personally am sick and tired of all of this. It's been going on now for quite a few years. You never have the reverse. You never see an issue where you've got a male changing room and the men are complaining because, you know, women are coming in, a transgender man, because there's never a fuss. They seem to behave themselves very well. This is always about biological men, and it's about power. And it's about, you've only got to see this tribunal that's been going on in Scotland with the nurses, Sandy Peggy, and somebody imposing their will. And it's just really not acceptable. And I would cancel my membership and I would have sent them an email back because they are supposed to be there and ensuring...
Don't you worry about that.
I'm sure you did.
I can imagine that it was quite a firm email back.
I'm sure you did, but I cannot comprehend for the life of me how these businesses haven't got it at this moment in time. We have lobbied and we have lobbied and we've done it for sports. The one great thing President Trump's done as he's come in, he's turned around in the United States and he said there's two sexes, there's male, female. If you want to be in a sport, you want to be in a gym, if you want to be somewhere, you go to the appropriate place. That is what you do. And it's about time this was all toughened up. And as I said, I'm sick of these misogynistic blokes who are really intimidating women and girls, and it's totally unacceptable.
Matt Lazar?
So, I think the problem I have with that is when it said about non-binary people. I mean, we have had now for basically a quarter of a century the Gender Recognition Act, which means you can legally change your gender. Very small number of people do it. It's basically been supported historically by all parties. The difference now is the self-identification, which is the issue, which is people are non-binary. If you want to call yourself non-binary, that's fine. I've got friends who do call themselves non-binary, but they should still go into the changing rooms which is their birth gender, because they haven't changed gender. They're just, they want to be called and trendy and call themselves non-binary. Well, that's fine, but still use the male or the female changing rooms as appropriate. And I think that's the issue I have, is that it's just, you shouldn't be about, if you've legally changed your gender, which is, say, is a very small number of people, then that's one thing. But anybody just fancies going in a different changing room because today's Tuesday.
The genuine, when you interview genuine trans people, as I say, they're often a bit older and they've gone through a very, very difficult time. And they are the ones that turn around and say, they are the ones that turn around and say that there are male and female changing room sports, all sorts of things, for very, very good reasons, and they fully understand it. The problem we have is these trans activists. These are activists and they're male. And they want to impose their will. We've seen it. They've tried to play the game with prisons, where they play the game now. They try and play the game in the courts, or all of a sudden, a woman was raped by a woman in Scotland. Well, the woman in Scotland wasn't a woman. The woman was a man. A woman cannot legally rape another woman. I mean, and they think the public are stupid and we don't quite get it. And they're trying to make this become the norm. It's not the norm.
Self-identification.
It is not the norm. And self-identification, I'm afraid, in these cases, cannot be allowed to happen. In my view, it would be illegal. If a male imposed himself in a female space, then to me, they are breaking the law. We have had laws down for indecency, and we've had laws on the statute book for centuries to protect women, to protect children, and they need to use them.
Well, look, I'll read out someone that completely disagrees with me. Reggie wrote that this is what you're suggesting basically positions trans women as aggressors, which is nasty. The reason why women don't feel safe in the gym is not because of trans women. To exclude them is to liken them to cis men, which is just transphobic. Now, let me be absolutely clear. I don't want to exclude anybody from the gym. I don't want to remove rights or anything like that from anybody. Everyone is welcome to go and do a spin class or whatever it is that they want. That's not my issue here. I also don't subscribe to language such as cis this and cis that, because I don't kind of agree with so much of this narrative. I don't believe that you can change your sex. When you're talking to me about gender and all the rest of it, I've got no issues with how people want to identify their own gender, but single-sex spaces should literally be, in my opinion anyway, based on biological sex, which is something that with all the will in the world you simply cannot change, and truth matters. There's a lot of gaslighting going on, Matthew Lars. There was a case where somebody was raped on a hospital ward. That person was told that no rape happened because there wasn't a male on that ward, because they were using
Baroness Nicholson sorted that out. She investigated that.
I mean, look, the people who've had an actual gender reassignment, I think, should be allowed to use female changing rooms, but not blokes.
Why don't they just make a unisex changing room in addition, and then there's no issue?
Look, I've got to say, I did indeed reach out to Virgin Active for comment. They didn't provide us with a comment, but the comment that they gave to me as an individual member was more than enough. If you don't provide single-sex female spaces where women such as myself can get changed without men being able to pretend to be something they're not and watch us getting undressed, then quite frankly, you are not the gym for me. So I did indeed bid them farewell. But speaking of bidding farewell, that's all we've got time for. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow night.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, very good evening to you. Here's your latest Met Office weather update for GB News. Now, it is going to be a bit of a chilly night ahead, and with that then, there's the risk of some frost, even some icy patches as there will be quite a few showers around. A lot of the showers in association with a cold front that's making its way southwards, so we will see some showery pulses across parts of Northern Ireland through the end of the day, and also feeding into parts of perhaps the Midlands, but also across Wales. Quite a few showery outbreaks here, some sleet or snow over some higher ground possible. Also plenty of showers piling in across eastern parts of Scotland, northeast England, and again some sleet or snow likely here. Temperatures are going to drop, and where we get clear skies dipping to around, if not a bit below freezing. So there could be a bit of frost around first thing tomorrow morning, also some icy stretches, so do take care on the roads. Otherwise, as we go through the morning, in the west of Scotland it's looking largely dry, quite bright as well. Further east, more showers to come and a bit of a breeze as well, adding to the chilly feel to things. Mostly dry across Northern Ireland, but also across northern England. In the east it's looking pretty showery. Across the Midlands and much of Wales, a largely bright fine start to the day, but in the far south of England it is going to be cloudier and there will be some showery outbreaks, all in association with that front that pushed through overnight. Through the day, I am expecting more showers tomorrow than we saw through today, and with that then there's a greater chance of some heavy ones, even a few rumbles of thunder perhaps, and some more sleet and snow. Over modest higher ground we could see a bit settling to lower levels. A few flurries are possible. Temperatures are going to be lower than today, and that makes it feel pretty chilly, especially when you factor in that wind. As we go through Thursday then, more showers across eastern parts. Further west, a greater chance of staying dry because there is high pressure to the west of us, but that high pressure is going to take quite a while to push its way in. So Friday is still going to be showery for many, but eventually we see something a little bit drier, more settled in time for the weekend, when we should have some sunshine around.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems heading towards Glasgow on the M8. Now, a lane's been closed off from junction 20 to 19, so as you head